I mean, no one questioned that. For some time, they insisted, and we understood certain countries to demand the regime to produce intelligence. But it's obvious they're not going to do it. They use all this initiative to go to the Supreme Court to kind of give some legitimacy to the fact that they were not going to produce their results. For some time, we even feared that they were able to print false intelligence because, I mean, they took 3 weeks before they finally announced that they were not going to do it. And they have the paper, they have the machines. I mean, they could have done that and put us in a situation in which of the two were actually true and authentic. But I think they realized that there were so many evidence in terms of videos, of witnesses, and even military reading intelligence in the different voting centers that they weren't going to be able to produce that force without leaving evidence. And something is happening. Let me tell you that many witnesses of the PSUV, of the party of Maduro, are starting to speak out and saying, we have the results, we were there. And what the opposition is saying is true. So if everybody knows that Edmundo Gonzalez won by a landslide, and through Venezuelan constitution, by Venezuelan constitution, whoever gets the most votes is president-elect, it is time to move ahead. It is time to move ahead. And I think some countries perhaps have hold from doing that, giving some time for the initiatives of the 3 countries to approach Maduro. But I think we need to increase our stake at this point and speak clearly with the truth. And I think the UK, Europe, Canada should, move forward and follow what already some Latin American countries have already stated, that Edmundo Gonzalez is president-elect and that he should be juramentado as president of Venezuela on January 10th, 2025.
Thank you. Andreina Triago from Bloomberg. Do you believe individual sanctions that are coming against Venezuelan officials and others, as well as visa restrictions against official relatives, will increase pressure on Maduro to negotiate? Do you believe the U.S. should take any other action, such as rescinding specific licenses to oil companies?
If you don't have pressure on different aspects of the structure of the regime, then what are you going to negotiate? You need both things. So that's why I disagree when some people try to confront the approach of the administrations, the previous and the actual administration in the US. I think you need both things. You need to have full pressure and you need to have also incentives. And that's what we are asking for the international community to do. Not only the United States. I mean, people that are committed crimes should be held accountable because that gives a sign, it sends a clear sign to those that are pressed to do the same, not to do it if they put in balance what's going on. And certainly with what the regime has done in the last days, I think it's past due the action of the international community in this sense. So, and we will still keep insisting that we're willing to sit down in a true negotiation, but you need to put pressure for them to understand that the cost of repression and the cost of staying in power will increase every day that goes by.
Eric Basile Emil from Politico. Could you speak to what the opposition plan? Could you speak to what the opposition plan or strategy is to break the stalemate that seems to be developing at this point? And what do you make of the fact that Washington is seemingly deferring to Brazil and Colombia negotiations and dialogue approach and not articulating its own vision for how to break through the stalemate?
Oh, I don't think we are in a stalemate. I think there are things moving, and some are not obvious, but they are. And I think the international community is increasing slowly their pressure, and I do think it has to be done more significantly. And we've been in touch with presidents of countries and prime ministers in Venezuela and Europe, as well as ministers of state. And I think there is a growing agreement that should be the path. And I do think the United States should do that as well, with getting a lot of support from Congress since they came back, and initiatives from Congress, bipartisan initiatives, are moving in the same direction.
Siguiente pregunta, next question is Guillermo José Torres de Guapa Televisión en Puerto Rico. I'm going to translate. How do you evaluate the behavior of Nicolás Maduro on recent days after the U.S. government ceased his plane in Dominican Republic, and the pressure that the U.S. could be doing against Maduro's regime?
You know, I think many of the reactions Maduro and his allies are taking these days, I think, are delivered, or the target is what's left of their groups, their party, and sectors in the armed forces. I think they are speaking mostly to them because they know what's going on within these groups and institutions. I don't know if you realize the magnitude. How do you say descalabro in English? Someone help me, Patricia. Someone help me. I don't know. Well, the crackdown. The crackdown, yeah. Mm-hmm. Of the Chavista structure and movement. I mean, if you look at what happened on July 28th, he lost in every single state and over 90% of the counties. In places that he used, the regime used to win with 80%, 90% of the votes, they lost. So this is huge in poor areas, in rich areas, in rural areas, in urban areas. I mean, all around the country, they lost total possibility of social control, and their own mobilization failed. They are aware of that. So yes, these reactions try to convey the idea that they are uncontrolled, and that's Venezuela's been normalizing. That is not true. What's actually happening? Yes, they have put a terror in all sectors, but society is regrouping, and we will maintain our pressure and new ways of mobilization under these circumstances that keep our people as safe as possible. And in this sense, we have to be resilient. We need to be very intelligent. We need to be audacious, and at the same time prudent to protect our people. But we will not stop, and we will not give up. And they know that. They know that. That's why this moment is so dangerous, but at the same time decisive. And our main task right now, I think it's my main responsibility, is to maintain the will to fight, alive and growing. Because believe me, beyond fear, the worst effect, or the tool that produces the most damage on our movement is its demoralization, and they use that And they use people that are supposedly in the opposition to produce that, to get the idea that we are in a stalemate or that Maduro is consolidating. And that's absolutely false.
Rina Garcia Cano, the Associated Press, beyond criticism, expressions of concern, calls for the release of the actas or tally sheets, and even called for investigation from the ICC. What practical steps do you believe the international community must take for Maduro's government to recognize the results you made public after the election? What is your interpretation of Maduro's cabinet reshuffling?
Well, I would say, Regina, all of the above, and there are many others that have been put in place previously. I've been thinking of what took place around the world with the transition to democracy in South Africa, and what the world was willing to do at that moment, and they turned Venezuela into they turned South Africa into a world cause, and that's what we're doing right now. We want to engage not only with governments but with the people. We want to have the people, Democrats all around the world, Europeans, Asians, African, of course, Latin Americans and Americans, North Americans, to understand how, important this moment is, even for them. Of course, for, ethical reasons and solidarity with human rights and freedom. But beyond that, what would mean for the world if Maduro would consolidate by force? What would mean for the region? I mean, we could have in a couple of years or even less, 4, 5, 6 million of Venezuelans fleeing. What it means to have El Tren de Aragua and other transnational crime organizations having, the support of Maduro regime. Maduro's alliance with Iran and Russia and Syria, what it means having that, ¿cómo se dice? Beach, ay Dios, ay, voy a necesitar ayuda de ustedes.
¿Qué quiere decir? Iván, Siria.
The window, sí, la punta de playa, o sea, como el punto de entrada and operations in the region. And I do think that, the idea that it wasn't possible to have a transition, that it wasn't possible to defeat Maduro, had been created throughout the world, and certain sectors, financial sectors, as I mentioned before, energy sectors, as we've said before, because there were some actors that had interest in the very short term. And I think that was very short-sighted, because I think it's been proved that the nature of this regime doesn't give an opportunity to Venezuela to develop in any sector, even in the energy. On the contrary, if we have a transition to democracy, Venezuela can turn in the strongest ally of the US and Western democracies in terms of our energy opportunities, not only in oil and gas. So, as I said before, I mean, this is a critical moment. Georgina, the world needs to act. They have a toolbox, and that has to be coordinated with intelligence, creativity, and strength. And that's what we're demanding right now. I mean, we the Venezuelan people have done everything. Everything. We built the strongest social movement against a tyranny. We competed with the rules of the tyranny, absolutely unjust and asymmetrical. And we won, and we proved it. So if the world or some government is thinking to look the other way around, imagine where sovereign will and popular sovereignty and vote as an institution ends up in the Western world. Then it would mean that elections are worthless, and that is something that we cannot let happen. And we need you at this point, because your colleagues in Venezuela, you are aware, have been practically silenced. So not people even fear to retweet one of my messages nowadays. So we need to overcome this. And while we, bring these forces back and act in this new phase and reality, we need the world to understand and to press in the direction we are moving.
Haley Hunt from the MSNBC. What is your message to President Biden? And can votes and democratic ideals ever win over authoritarianism? Tell me about it.
Yes, Sally.
We are on that. Sorry about the comment, but
yes, absolutely yes. It's not easy. It's very dangerous. I've lost good friends. Just last week, the person that was free, that I most trusted, was kidnapped. And Perkins Rocha, and next day, Diario Bilieri, which was one of my closest allies. So we do not underestimate what's going on and what they're willing to do. But the answer is yes. And I think the Biden administration, as well as both parties in Congress, have the biggest opportunity to prove that can be part and exercise their leadership of the free world. If a conflict so urgent and profound and that represents such a risk to a threat to the security of a hemisphere cannot be addressed and solved, then it seems very unlikely that other conflicts further away can be solved. And that's the message I want to convey. I mean, this is urgent. I mean, this, I know migration is one of the issues that most concern the American society nowadays. And you cannot address the consequences. You have to address the causes. And the causes of Venezuelan migration is Maduro himself and the regime. And the fact that you saw migration declining in the last months significantly is because most Venezuelans have hope and still have hope and still believe, as I do, that the end of this process will be freedom. How many days will it take? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But I am absolutely convinced that every day that Maduro prolongs the agony, the damage is huge, not also for Venezuela, but for the region. And as I said before, never before we had aligned all the interests, all the vectors of stakeholders in one same direction, which is an orderly and sustainable transition to democracy. And that's where we're moving. We wish we could have been faster, certainly. But this has made evident that we are not facing a conventional dictatorship. It is a criminal system. And that's how it must be addressed. And as I said, there are many things that could be done in addition to those that are being put in place right now from the international community perspective.
We have reached the hour already. I think we can say a few more minutes, I've been told, but probably not all the questions could be answered because it's already 11 a.m. So I'll go with the next question. Stefano Posebon from CNN International. On November 5th, the US will have a new president. While President Trump embraced a maximum pressure strategy during the Guaido days, the Biden-Harris administration gambled on deeper engagement with Maduro, which led to the July 28th election. How do you think either of the two candidates could help the Venezuelan cause once a new administration is in place? And can you confirm whether you spoke with either of the candidate teams?
Stefano, I think I mentioned it before. I think it's a mistake to see it as different approaches. I think it's a mix of them that has brought where we are right now. I mean, if you don't have pressure and threats, there's nothing to negotiate. There's no way you will have someone sitting down to negotiate. So you have to have both approaches. And yes, we've been in contact with both teams.
Alonso Moleiro from El País. How do you feel now? Optimistic, afraid, worried?
Both, Alonso. I'm certainly worried for you and from every Venezuelan that is facing this horrible situation. I'm worried because I see how social issues and the life of the poor in Venezuela is already deteriorating and will be damaged significantly in the days to come. I've been in contact with sectors in the food business, and they are terrified with what they are, they're seeing happening in terms of consumption. But at the same time, I'm more than optimistic. I'm absolutely convinced that what we did is huge. I mean, this is historic. Most people thought it was impossible. And you know that. They told you, they told me it was impossible to get here. And here we are. And we have to feel very proud of what we did. And we have to recognize the strength we have. And we have to fight against the instruments that regime use, which is lies, terror, and demoralization. And when you find so-called, experts, analysts, and so on that start saying that, this is not moving ahead or that Maduro is consolidating or stabilizing, that is false. That is false. And whoever knows Venezuelan will know that that is not happening. On the contrary. But I'm not saying this is going to be easy. No, I've never said it. And certainly these are the most dangerous times we're facing.
Ana Rodríguez, del Tiempo de Colombia. Maduro continues to ignore the calls from Colombia and Brazil. Nothing more was learned from yesterday's meeting with Petro and Lula. What do you think should be the next steps of these two countries? Sorry to just make a comment here, Margarina. I've been told that while we have been on this press conference, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia Canciller Murillo, habló a la prensa, and he said that the meeting yesterday with Maduro did not happen, and they are now trying to reschedule. So, what do you think should be the next steps of Brazil and Colombia?
Well, they have to get Maduro to answer the phone, at the least.
Indeed. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera. Even if Maduro is isolated, he has learned to bypass international pressure and economic sanctions. What would he recognize that he lost the election?
Lucia, I know. Some people perhaps think that we've tried everything in Venezuela, but you more than anyone know that every situation is different, and we are not the same country that we were a year ago. I would say 2 months ago. And yes, we can learn a lot from history, but there are different forces evolving in the world nowadays. And I think what we've lacked in the past was the right coordination among all these strategies. Today we have a legitimate leadership in the opposition, legitimate, because of the primaries and because of the election. We have a united nation that goes beyond the immediate political parties. This is very important. Never in 25 years we had Venezuelans so close and determined to move ahead. And never before we have the world calling the regime for what it is. Not a conventional, authoritarian or, como que decían, imperfect
competitive.
¿Ah?
Or competitive, también le decían competitive authoritarianism.
Yeah, or
competitive.
Imperfect democracy and todo tipo de eufemismos, We know what we're facing right now. And we have a strategy to do it. And we've come a really long way. We've never been stronger than we are today. The regime has never been weaker than it is today. So this is not a time to feel frustrated. On the contrary, we have to be pragmatic. We have to put our feet in the ground and understand what are the options that we say, how we coordinate and how we take care of us and of our leadership. But we need to speak out and do not fall in the traps of the regime, which is that he's saying, well, you have tried everything and here we are. No. It's not the same situation. It's not the same Venezuela. And it's not the same relation and willingness to act of the international community.
Okay, we have three questions left and we can close at 11:15.
David, pero I really need to run. Why don't you read the three of them and then I can make...
Sorry, I didn't. What do you...
Puedes leerle las tres. Read the three of them.
Okay, sí. From the Telegraph, what amnesty measures and for which figures from the regime would the opposition be willing to consider in order to facilitate a democratic transition? That's one. The other one from the BBC, are you in touch with the CNE member Juan Carlos Del Pino? And the last one from the Italian daily La Repubblica, could the Holy See help in finding a solution and how? That's it.
Okay. Regarding measures and incentives, it would all depend on the relative strength in which you reach a negotiation table. What will be need to offer? I do not think it is proper to enter into specific incentives or measures, but I do think that Maduro's negotiation position deteriorates every day that passes because of his obvious and cruel violations of human rights. We are certainly willing to give incentives for this process to move ahead peacefully and orderly. Secondly, yes, I've been in touch with Juan Carlos Del Pino. And third, I do believe the Vatican and the Church, the Catholic Church, has an important role to play because it's a very much respected institution in Venezuela. And I do think they're doing some things and can do more. So I guess I'm praying for that to happen.
Well, thank you, Maria Corina, for your time, because we know that you are extremely busy, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And the only thing I can say, many of you have been extraordinary in terms of what you have done, conveying the impressive achievement the Venezuelan people have done. And this has been epic. Just to tell you, we had a meeting, David and I, with one of these democratic experts and gurus in the world. And he said something like, you guys don't realize what you have done. You've actually set a new standard for electoral observation, not only for Latin America, but for the world. You have done that. And you have done that under horrible conditions. And it's important to value that. and to build from that, because we have been innovating. And I know that the history, history will recognize what we did. And many case studies will be written about what we did in the campaign and how this movement grew. And now we need you more than ever to be the voices of truth, which is what the regime wants to destroy. But we will stay close to the truth and defend it, have popular sovereignty be respected, have Edmundo González juramentado as Venezuela's president on January the 10th, and bring our kids back home. So thank you very much to all.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Recording stopped.